inspiring small batch brewer of handcrafted soda. Back in my home kitchen, I'll prepare a variety of country-style dishes you can serve for any occasion. Light and steamy dill and cheddar waffles, crisp oven-fried garlic chicken, finishing off with a warm, comforting rice pudding.
Hi, I'm George Hirsch. Welcome to George Hirsch Lifestyle.
Mercer Cutlery is a proud supporter of George Hirsch Lifestyle, partnering with chefs for over 30 years. Hoffman Media is a proud supporter of George Hirsch Lifestyle and publishers of Celebrate magazine, highlighting the most important events in our lives, inspiration to entertain, decorate, and celebrate. And by Evite, a digital invitation and party planning destination, and proud supporter of George Hirsch Lifestyle, celebrating year-round entertaining.
I'm going to share with you my recipe for simple country comforts with my savory waffles. Let's get started with my cheddar and dill, which will be the actually first part of the waffle and kind of like the highlight of the main ingredient. You know, most people are usually used to having waffles with syrup and kind of on the sweet side, but waffles eaten throughout the day and served with a little fried chicken and savory seasonings actually taste really, really good. So I started here with 2 cups of flour and a half a teaspoon of baking soda and then 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar, which will be a little sweetness. It needs a little sweetness in the flour. So the real benefit of these waffles in my recipe is separating the yolks from the whites. By doing this, you're actually going to get a much lighter batter. I'll want to make sure, of course, that your egg whites are always in an oil-free bowl, that there's no grease in it, and that is really going to help the whites really whip up to a much lighter consistency. So always start on a lower speed just until the whites begin to break up. You'll stop it when it gets a light whip mark within the egg whites. Now you can see those strands starting to work its magic. And just think, all the air that's going in the meringue is actually going to wind up in the batter, making it nice and fluffy. Okay, now that our whites are nice and light and fluffy, we'll just break up our yolk slightly and then just add a few drops of the milk in first. Make a nice well within the batter. And then slowly add in the milk. Don't add it in all in one shot. As the batter starts to absorb farm fresh milk, which I'm using, which is a little creamier than general homogenized milk. As soon as all the milk is absorbed, now I can fold in my egg whites. And again, the egg whites, you want to fold them in thirds, small amount at a time, because as the egg whites get folded, they are breaking down and some of the air is coming out of it. But each time you add in the egg whites, the meringue, it lightens up the batter really nice. And then the remainder of the egg whites. And then as soon as you see almost the last of the meringue being folded in, then we'll add in the butter. We didn't add the butter in before. There's a third of a cup of butter, 5 tablespoons. We didn't add the butter in earlier because butter would have immediately made the meringue break down. Now I'll add in the savory. I'll fold in a small amount of cheddar cheese and a small amount of dill, a couple tablespoons of both, fold it into the batter, get it evenly mixed in. Once everything's been mixed in there, we can take a ladle, have a waffle iron that's preheated. This is a Belgian waffle iron. You can make these with regular size. I like the Belgian pretty much because they come out nice and thick. So if I'm serving it with some nice chicken, it kind of goes really nice as a side dish. Close it, and you need to let it go for 3 minutes on each side. Okay, let's check the first waffle. Oh, it looks great. Oh, perfect. Absolutely perfect. I'll load it up with more batter. So we'll have plenty of waffles. Excellent. Oh my God, the aroma that comes off the waffles is just great. Okay, for the waffles that came off, I'm just gonna dress them up with a little bit of cheddar cheese on top while they're still warm. And sprinkle a small amount more of the dill on top. I'm diving right in.
Join me as I drop in on two childhood friends who reunite through their love of good old-fashioned baking.
Working in an office environment, and I kind of thought, what am I doing? You know, why am I here? And so then I went to culinary school.
But you found that baking really was your
Yes.
passion.
When I took classes in LA, it was everything. I mean, we learned, you know, the mother sauces, the whole thing. And then I just found that I really liked the baking pastry part of it the best.
And baking was always a passion. I mean, I would bake whenever I could, and I would just give it away to neighbors. Try a new recipe, try this. And someone moved into the neighborhood, I gotta go make a pie.
I met Mimi, and we both discovered that we, you know, had kind of the same dream and the same thoughts, and so we just kind of worked to make it happen.
Our wholesale business actually just kept expanding, so we decided to build a bigger space to accommodate that, and said, let's, you know, open a little retail shop to go with it and live the dream.
Margaret, in making scones, what's the most important thing to you?
I think keeping the butter cold so it doesn't fully incorporate into the dough and it keeps it light and flaky.
And we have our regulars that come in every morning for their coffee and breakfast, and we had first-timers still that this summer I didn't even know you were here, and I've lived here, so it's nice that it's always changing and you just never know.
It makes everyone happy.
Right.
It does make people happy, and you see the little girl come in and get her birthday cake, and it's so much fun.
It's very funny. A lot of people don't understand is, you know, with baking and pastry, you have things come out of the oven, everybody wants to jump in right away.
No.
Gotta let it settle and
Yes,
cool down.
yes.
Let the moisture
Yeah,
kind of
especially
go
with
back in.
any kind of bread or something like this, because if you break it open, the steam all comes out, and it's almost gummy and not good in your mouth then. So definitely let it rest.
Well, I'm gonna let these
Yeah.
rest, but I'm gonna tear up your store. Get the ones that have rested.
Okay.
Now that's good country comfort.
One of my favorite dishes is fried chicken, but I'm gonna put my own spin on it because I'm gonna make it an oven fried chicken. By far, much easier and simpler to do, and it's also healthier for you. Once it's seasoned with my herb mix and coat it with a little flour and put in the oven, 45 minutes later you have some really good fried chicken. So let's get started here. I have a 2.5 pound organic chicken. It's a whole chicken, and I want to show you a very easy way just to cut the chicken up. Of course, you can buy it in pieces at the market, but you can save a little bit of money if you cut up your chicken rather than get it pre-cut. So what we have here is, of course, the legs and the wings. The easiest way to cut it naturally is to have the wings towards the back or towards you, and kind of hold on to the legs, make 2 slots, spin it around. Now what you can do is with the knife, just take and break out the leg and thigh, and now you have one piece. If you wanted to leave it as one, You could leave it together, or you can just make a cut and separate the two of them. Now you notice with the chicken, there's kind of a line here. There's a little line of fat, and it actually separates the joint bone. So follow that right through, and then you can separate the drumstick from the thigh. And of course, you can do the same thing with the other one. And the thing with any type of butchering or cutting that you're doing is you want to let the knife do the work. When you are butchering, you only want to use the tip of the knife. Just let the knife do the work. You shouldn't be using the back end, the heel end of it. A bony knife, you're using the tip of it. So you almost let gravity do its work. Take and pop it again, away from the back. Again, you have the same line right here. Of course, you cut it back. The wings, again, just let gravity work for you. Separate it from the breast. Pull it up, let gravity work for you. Separate it from the breast. Take the back. Now, sometimes you can leave the back as part of the thigh, but I actually like eating the backs, so I always cut them this way and leave the back whole, or if I'm making stock, I'll even use the back for the stock. Next thing I'll do is just separate the far part of the back away from the breasts. Now you could leave the breast whole if you wanted to just roast it and have a nice roasted piece of breast, or you just take and you kind of cut out a little bit of the cartilage by the end of the back. So sometimes the difference of being able to cut up your own chicken versus buying it already cut up sometimes can be, you know, a couple dollars a pound. Now we'll season the chicken with a mixture of the dried herbs, which is basil, oregano, a little thyme, all ground together, a small amount of paprika, a little sweet paprika on the chicken, a small amount of powdered garlic, and then just a pinch of nutmeg. Just rub in all the spices. Okay, once your hands have been washed, we want to take and put a little fresh lemon juice on the chicken. It really adds a nice flavor. And what we want to do with the lemon is, before you cut it open, you just want to squeeze it or rub it, and you're loosening all the juices inside the lemon. And then see how they just run right out by loosening it up. So now for the chicken, I found the best way, you could just toss in the flour in the chicken. What begins to happen then is sometimes it coats a little too heavy in one spot. And one of the easiest ways I found is just to take a small amount of flour and put it in a bag. You can use a plastic Ziploc type bag, or you could use a paper bag. A little fresh sea salt on the chicken. And then you're ready to go. Put like a piece or two at a time in the bag. Close your bag up well. My mom, when she used to make fried chicken, she'd even use a brown bag, a brown paper bag to coat it. But my mom used the old traditional way. She fried her chicken. But sometimes, like I said, frying it can be a little bit messier and maybe sometimes not as good for you. So you just keep repeating. And then once the chicken starts to get a little light brown, which would take maybe 20-25 minutes, you want to cut the temperature down to like 350 degrees until the chicken is fully cooked. And what's nice is you might think, well, where's the wonderful amount of fat that sometimes goes along with fried chicken? Actually, the natural fat that's in chicken and underneath the skin is actually what begins to fry it while it's in the oven. So I put it in a very hot oven, 425 degrees, for about 15 to 20 minutes. After that, the aroma is going to tell you, hey, it's time to check me. Lower it to 350 degrees for about 30 minutes. So this is a great alternative than the traditional fried chicken, and of course it's much better for you, but it's just as crispy. You can see how well browned the chicken has all become. All the different spices and the seasonings. And there's nothing better than a steamy bit of fried chicken, even if it's oven fried chicken. And it's one of those things, when it comes out of the oven, you certainly are not going to want to wait. I know I don't. That was so good.
There's nothing better than a good home-cooked meal served with a craft brewed beverage.
So what inspired you to become the kind of artisanal soda king?
Craft beer scene is so big right now, why not craft soda? The way I describe it to people, it's like making tea, taking all your roots, you're steeping them as you would tea, you're adding your sugars, combining everything, boiling it a little bit. And I'll start with the sarsaparilla.
And where'd that come from? Like where?
That's primarily India, Jamaica, Hawaii, or Mexico. But I'm using all natural stuff, no preservatives, all natural sweeteners, no artificial coloring or anything like that. Flavor-wise, you're going to really get hit by honey. You get kind of the texture of the honey, and then it rolls into the sarsaparilla, and it has that licorice anise finish, which is that bite that you get from root beer. And then you transfer it to a keg and then force carbonate it as you would beer.
Right.
And the whole process takes about 5 days, start to finish.
So of course the seasonings and flavorings are important, but the main ingredient really is water.
Water.
And how does that play in? Do you have to source your water from any far off land, or?
Long Island water is probably the best water you could use. It's really great water to brew with, so there's really not much you have to do to it.
When I go into restaurants and people are with us and everyone's ordering bottled water, I ask for the tap water. Not because I'm cheap. People think, oh, I spend money. No, I love the tap water.
Can't tell the
especially
difference.
in East Hampton Village area. Where do you market this? Where do you sell it, source it?
Do it at a couple of farmers markets, and then a few shops around eastern Long Island, a website in the city that sells other small batch products like this, and then Eli's in Manhattan.
So where are you going to take it from here?
I'd like for it to remain small batch, but there's a time where, doing it the way that we just did it isn't going to work.
Right.
So as time progresses, the company will progress as well.
There's nothing that says simple country comfort better and summing up a meal than my rice pudding. Let's get started right away. I have here 3/4 of a cup of rice that's already been pre-blanched, pre-cooked. It's fully tender. And first thing I want to do is start to make the custard for the pudding. And I'll add in 1/3 of a cup of sugar, pure cane sugar, 1.5 cups of regular milk, and let that dissolve. Now I want to be careful. I don't want to whip the sugar too much and the milk too much, because I don't want to mix in air into the batter, because otherwise it has more of a tendency to curdle. Just 1/2 teaspoon of salt, just for a little flavor. Vanilla, about 1 teaspoon of vanilla. A pinch of cinnamon. And here's a real good tip you might want to try next time you're cooking with raisins or baking with raisins, is to plump your raisins. Now raisins are a dried grape. So what happens with raisins is they become very, very hard. All you have to do is either microwave them for about 10 seconds in a little water, just to make them swell up, or even use a little bit of hot water on the raisins, and they'll become much more tender and plump when baking. So I'll put in my raisins, and now I'll begin to heat it up. Now the first part of heating up the custard, it kind of is okay on its own. It doesn't need much stirring. It definitely doesn't need any whipping. We just want the temperature of the batter to come up slightly. When the temperature of the batter comes up, then we can put our rice in and then continue making the pudding. So what I have here is one farm fresh egg. I'm just going to lightly break up the egg. And you notice I have some more milk. This isn't milk that I forgot to put in. It's actually something that's going to help me make the transition from the hot custard in here into the egg and the remaining milk. Okay, now it's coming up to temperature. Now you notice here I have a double boiler. It's not sitting directly over a flame. A lot of times when you cook with milk and you're going to be adding in eggs, making custards and creams, it's always a better idea to use a double boiler instead of going directly over the heat. And using a double boiler, the bowl only goes down that far and the water level is only about 2 inches, creating a little bit of a steam vapor. I'll add in all my rice now that the milk has begun to warm up. And when I say simple comfort, you know, there's so many different types of dishes that may come to mind. For example, for me, the simple comfort and country comfort was my Nana. I mean, she made probably the best rice pudding in the world, and I think a lot of the inspiration even from this recipe and this technique did come from her. So I'm letting it all come to temperature. And what I want to do is as soon as it starts to have kind of a little bit of a steam vapor come off the rice and the milk, then I can make the liaison with the egg and the remaining milk. Okay, we'll start to warm up the egg and the milk by putting in some of the warm milk and rice, tempering the egg and the milk, and then pour all the remaining in. Now you can see it's looking a little bit more yellow, or the color that you might be familiar with a rice pudding. And this part, you don't have to keep whipping it or stirring it too much because you don't want too much air to go into the pudding. You can see now the pudding is starting to thicken up. It's starting to resemble the characteristic of a pudding. Okay, now that it's nicely thickened and turned into a really good pudding, it's ready to come off. And we'll pour it back into our casserole. And rice pudding is really delicious, eaten hot. But it's even better when it has a chance to chill down. We can sprinkle a small amount of cinnamon on it. And even put a little dollop of butter on top. There's nothing that says country comfort better than a little warm rice pudding. Oh, Nana would be so proud.
So there you have it, my country comfort inspired dishes. Light and steamy dill and cheddar waffles, oven fried garlic chicken with a nice golden crust, and my creamy rice pudding for dessert.
If I can do it, you can do it. We'll see you real soon. Really good. Really, really good.
For more on recipes, entertainment,